Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we have we have Eunice Noell-Waggoner, president of the Center of Design for an Aging Society. This should be a good one. Um, Graduated from the University of Oregon with an interior architecture degree. The first half of her career involved interior and lighting design for public buildings and commercial spaces. The second half, she's been addressing the needs of older adults, focused on lighting for aging vision and health through the Center of Design for an Aging Society, a not for profit organization she founded. She was the founding chair of the Illuminating Engineering Society's Lighting for Older Adults and Low Vision Population Committee. She continues to serve on the IES committee, contributing to different standards. Um, on this show, we're going to discuss this in depth. How lighting distributors can contribute to that space through an understanding of these types of problems. Um, she's done some work with Brown University, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Center of Design for an Aging Society, and so on and so on. We'll get more into that as the show goes on. This should be a good one, like I said. But before we go there, Greg, we got to go to led-llc.com. That's light efficient design, brother.
That's right, for their Flex Color shoebox and wall pack retrofit. You can switch between color temps from 3K, 4K, and 5K. Four different wattages, 30, 50, 80, 110, so up to a 400 watt replacement. It has a fan and thermal sensor built into it, so it runs cool, ensures a long life, and it's rotatable and directional. One of the best retrofits I ever did in a wall pack and in an area light was a directional retrofit like this. I drive by it still every night, just about because it's in my hometown area, and it looks awesome. So check these guys out.
Never copycats, always original. Go to led-llc.com. They're always cooking up something swanky, those guys, eh?
They do,
And
always.
of course, proud members of the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Greg, I heard there's some big news coming in with something going on in September.
That's right. We're going to be doing our Nailed convention back in person, finally together, and we're going to be doing it in conjunction with ArcLight Summit. So 2 for 1.
Two for
More
one.
details to come.
Go to naild.org. That's right, nailed.org. But for right now, Eunice, welcome to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Greg, why don't we kind of unpack some of the technical things that you want to talk about before we dive deeper into the topic?
Yeah, I guess first of all, you read it the bio, but why did you start the Center of Design for an Aging Society? Why and when did you start it?
Well, I started it, this will reveal how long I've been in the business. I started in 1992, and it started because, I have a lot of caring about older people, and I could tell by my grandparents that lighting was really an issue for them. And so I started just paying attention in going through care facilities, seeing what their lighting was, and did I feel that it was meeting the needs of the older people. But of course, I didn't have a background. So there's a library right close to where I live called the Deaver's Eye Institute, where they gave me free access to their medical journal and their library. So that's where I first started educating myself about aging, vision, eye diseases, all those kinds of things. So once I understood that, then I was aware of the regulations that they had in the state of Oregon for nursing homes, and it was just all mixed up. And so we formed a ad hoc committee with anybody that had anything to do with lighting or energy use or whatever. They were there at the table, and that was both the nonprofit and the for-profit nursing home administrations or long-term care administrations. So from that, we hashed out what we thought would be the best appropriate light level for given areas. And that actually formed the basis of the first IES document. We did tweaking once we got more professionals on our committee, like Dr. Alan Lewis and people who really understood vision from an optometric standpoint and as well as lighting. So it started there, and from then on, I petitioned the IES to form that separate committee, and Rita Harold agreed to that, and so that's when we got started.
Very good. And the IES document you're talking is that the recommended practice 28, RP 28?
Right, RP 28. It was first published in 1998. Took us about 6 years to come up with all the research background to document why we were saying what we were saying, and so then it's been updated many times since that time. So the current one is um, RP 2820. Oh, I should have meant to have a copy of it here. I've got one back there
Oh, no
to show
problem.
you. But yeah, so anyway, it's the what it's an ANSI standard. So if anyone wants to know what lighting is appropriate, they would go to that document. Um, and they also use it in a court of law. So if there's a lawsuit that, is there enough light? And they say, well, let's go to the IES document, and that's where it is.
Very
But
good.
it is
Yeah.
difficult. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you continue, please.
Well, I was going to say it's difficult to get it all implemented because every state has the ability to do their own senior care regulations. And so it's all over the map. And so we did mail a copy of the recent RP to every state regulator. So we'll see if that takes hold. But it's also recognized by the FGI guidelines. So it's getting out there and other people are referencing it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the questions I had is those RPs is how do you get them to actually stick and people to follow through? I think the name alone, recommended practice, it needs to be like the law, Rule
Yeah,
28.
demanded. Well,
Yes.
I'll I'll tell you, I would like to start with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's the governmental official. They can write code that sticks, and they they have their rules apply to any care facility that receives funding from them, and they pay for 75% of all the long-term care in the United States. So, I mean, that would be a nice big stick to have. But so far, they are talking about lighting in terms of adequate and comfortable. Well, that
Mm.
doesn't get you anywhere.
Mm.
For who? Staff, older people, somebody that's blind. No, it's very frustrating.
There's a bunch of different directions. You can go with the balkanization of standards, which is a problem in with almost every lighting issue, is that
Mm-hmm.
there are so many different layers of ordinances and codes and regulations that are out there. The biggest problem I see, though, Eunice, is that the stock of elderly and care homes is already built. And when the environment is already built, they've probably already done an LED retrofit at some point, or at least 50% of them, or some massive amount of them have already upgraded lighting in the last 10, 15 years. If it wasn't LED, they went from T12 to T8 or something. They've already invested in lighting. And these money is scarce in these kinds of places. And so,
Yes.
they're after energy savings. I was just in a city-owned care home here in Toronto, and very poor light levels. You're talking about, two GU13 CFLs for 4 beds in the middle of the room, no table lights, nothing. Um, so this is an issue. I think that it's very difficult to address the existing building stock, because once the building is already built, then you're kind of fighting for funds with other priorities that usually in these cases go to medical decisions, hospital types of beds, nursing staff, and everything else. How is it possible to fight for the dollar in that situation, or is it largely almost a lost cause in some instances?
Well, if you want to write off our senior population, it is a lost cause. And but I won't. And when you realize that 43% of all the deaths from COVID occurred in the United States in nursing homes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is a medical issue. Nocturnal sleep is very important to support the immune system. And it's just notorious that care facilities have, particularly nursing homes and some assisted living, that they other presentations that have been given talk about starved for darkness. Well, these folks are starved for light and darkness. The research points out that the lack of high light levels during the day, which you could take people outside, right? But high light levels or low light levels during the day, they're missing the high light level that they need to synchronize their circadian rhythm. And then at night, they have too much light and too much noise at night. So it's keeping people awake. So to me, the beauty of the research that I did with Brown University and Pacific Northwest National Laboratory really documented that we could save energy because what we wanted to do is reduce the light level at nighttime so that you didn't have light pollution going into the patient's bedroom from the corridor where the staff is. Because we dimmed that light down from they had LEDs that were installed by the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. It wasn't anything we designed. We were just measuring how effective that was.
Mm-hmm.
But we did document that we saved energy as well as we improved sleep at night simply because we were changing the color to a warm, buttery amber color, and we dimmed it down 20%. So it saved money over what they had with their fluorescent system when they turned off every other light.
The issue of ROI is going to haunt the lighting business for a long time. We've spent 20 years selling lighting systems based on financial returns, on energy savings for so long. And we've done an excellent job penetrating those ideas into the consumers. So whenever they think of changing lighting, they're doing it to save money, cash. That's going to be hard for our industry to overcome. When you're looking at these situations, we've talked to many people, Eunice, who talk about circadian rhythm and increased performance and all these sorts of things. Is it, do you know, or is it just a gut instinct, or what is it for you? I believe that all the benefits of circadian everything, there's only one benefit, and that's better sleep. And then from better sleep, you get the other benefits are ancillary to that. So you get better sleep, and then you're more alert. You feel better during the day. You're able to accomplish your tasks better. And so the idea of just focusing on sleep as the key metric, for circadian, and then letting the rest fall where it may, is that something that you agree with, or do you think that there's other things going on there?
Well, I don't agree with it fully because it's so important to experience that light and dark cycle. And the we in our research we said that we focused on sleep because we knew that the light levels from the LED system that was installed wasn't bright enough, wasn't intense enough. So when LEDs first came on, they were saying, well, maybe we don't have to have the light as bright as we thought we did before when we were using fluorescent because we can color tune it to the wavelength that impacts the IPRGC the most. Well, that's partly why we were doing this research, is to prove out what everyone thought would be happening. But what we, by doing the measuring the light that these residents experienced in the corridors is where the light was put, and they did put not tunable, but they did put other lighting in the dining room. We found that these residents had higher light levels in the dining room than they did in this whiz bang LED tunable, dimmable system in the corridor, because you have to be in the corridor to benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? People were in the dining room 3 times a day. And so my point is, a lot of the old stock that you talk about was single story,
Mm-hmm.
buildings kind of in the community. Well, let's put skylights in the dining room. It's limited scope. Get the skylights so that you aren't having to pay. It's no longer an energy bill that you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at, and it's already timed. I can't tell you the problems we had getting the control system to work correctly in the research study, because the 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 main computer was tied to the guy in maintenance. Well, he went on vacation and his
Yes.
computer went to sleep. And so we thought, this, something's wrong here. And so we were going to have 4 month periods to do the research for the static and the tunable, and then we did a crossover study. So then we were going to do the other people with just the reverse of what we'd done before. But we had to cut it down to 2 months for each cycle because of this lost time that we had because the computer went to sleep. So it's, if you if you have a
Oh,
skylight and you've got daylight coming
yep.
in, you don't have to tune Mother Nature. She knows what she's
Yeah.
doing.
So that's exactly my next question. You kind of semi-answered my next question. So I'm a big believer in sun tunnels and skylights. I think that they're fantastic. Um, and they're way underutilized by lighting professionals, and that the two things should start to merge together as a
Mhm.
practice. But my question would be, can you really you get a sun tunnel in a kid's bedroom or someone's bedroom during a sunny day or even a cloudy day? There's so much light pouring through the sun tunnel. The artificial light or the electric light can't even compete with it. Like you can't
Right,
even sometimes see it because there's so
right.
much natural light coming in into the space. If Can we even try? I mean, I understand you want to increase light levels, but is it possible to even replace that with electric light sources, or is it just we got to get sun tunnels, windows, skylights, and people outside on a regular basis?
Um, I would say I believe in sun tunnels because my mom's got one in her bathroom, and I know exactly what you're talking about. However, if you want, older eyes need even and consistent light levels. So if you've got a sun tunnel here and another one 20 feet away, you aren't going to have even and consistent light levels. Part of the problem that these people who are installing these tunable LED systems are running into is that they forget basics of lighting design. Have designed for your population. Older eyes are much more sensitive to glare. So you want high light levels because they don't get as much light on the retina. So you need higher light levels, but you need to do it in a way that it doesn't produce glare. The West, to me, I like direct, indirect fixtures because you're lighting the spatial volume, not this downlight kind of thing. So, um, and if it's a skylight, it needs to be diffused. You can't have bright beams of sunlight coming in because that's going to be glare and shadows. So it's knowing how to do it and designing for the clientele.
And you said in general you need more light as you age. Is there a graph or a chart that says when you're 40 you should do this, when you're 50 this, 60 this? Is it that simple or not
Well,
so?
it's when you're in the younger years, it's not as critical because your eyes can make the
No.
adjustment. But there is a graph in RP28 that says by the time you're 80 years old, which is the average age of people in long term care, only 1/5 of the light reaches the retina as it did when you were age 20.
Oh,
So, yeah, it's staggering. People don't, if you haven't experienced yourself or watched somebody try to negotiate a space that is older or vision impairment, you don't really grasp the magnitude of the problem.
Is it fair to say that while elderly folks and people in long term care get out the least to the outdoors, that it's probably most important for them to get outside?
It's absolutely important, not only for circadian rhythm, but for vitamin D synthesis,
Mm.
which again supports the immune system. So here, I say we're the people in care facilities so vulnerable because of lack of light exposure, either in their eyes or out on their bodies to keep their immune system in good shape.
And how often are you guys getting into color temperatures when it comes to, is it just light output and how much light you need, or is it color temp too that you
Oh,
get involved in?
thank you. No, we, pardon me, we've tried to follow the color temperature of the outside. So in the research project, we did 6,500 K in the morning at full intensity in the tunable area. I should back up and say that what we were doing as we had a static lighting condition that was based on the old fluorescent system that had been there, and that had been 4,100 K. So that's what we gave the static group at the time. But then the tunable group, we did 6,500 K from 7 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. We warmed it up a bit to 4,100 K from 4 to 8. And then at 8 o'clock is when it dimmed down to 20% of the light during the day and changed to 2,700 K.
What
So
were your
it is
findings?
following. Uh, I can we direct people to the published document, because
Of course, yes.
like okay, because the write up that the PNNL did is really a treasure trove of information, particularly if you want to know what metric was used. Well, we compared all of them, and there's graphs to show that. So the um, I can give you the reference for that document, and maybe even supply it as a PDF, because it's published through the Department of Energy, and sometimes you get lost in the weeds trying to find it. So, but
So yeah,
it's
we'll
really
post that on the Get a Grip on Lighting website. But I'm excited to know, like, what was you had a base case, you had a you had the
well with static.
fluorescent.
Okay,
Yeah, what were the
and we were
benefits?
only but if we could only say we had a benefit of sleep, because we didn't have high enough light levels to have a benefit for alertness and reduce depression, and there's other metrics that we were looking at, but we couldn't do all of them. We could only prove that we could improve sleep. That's
And
why
did
I
you
talk
prove
about
that?
that.
Did you
Yeah, we
improve sleep?
did. Yeah, right.
And how
Yeah,
did you improve? Tell me
they.
about how you know that you improve sleep.
Oh well, they uh, interviewed people. They interviewed staff. Oh, it was, and we were, Naomi and I were measuring light levels at all times of the day and night in each one of the phases. And then the team from Brown would come in, and that area is not my area of expertise, but they were doing all the testing to see exactly uh, what the sleep was. But basically, we improved half of the, uh, yeah, we had 63 people in the research portion, and more than half of them greatly improved their sleep by twice as much.
Versus the other group was zero, or did you have another, like, did you
Yeah,
have a control?
no, they compared it. Oh yeah, that's why we had
Okay.
a static group and the tunable group,
Huh.
so that we could compare both of those groups. That's why I say that document is so full of rich information. So,
That's an incredible um, improvement to quality of life. If like
oh,
if
you're
that
telling me.
Yeah, I mean, if it, like, I mean, I keep going back to this with the circadian folks, is that just make it about improved sleep, because we were talking about we didn't have enough light to reduce depression, we didn't have enough light to create alertness. Improved sleep reduces depression. Improved sleep creates
Right,
more alertness, and
right.
I'm not even sure if we're capable of accomplishing that with electric light. It's not clear as far as the host of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast has encountered, that there is anything other than improved sleep that can be accomplished with circadian. And that they're not, even if they're saying that, they're not sure if it's actually as a result of the light or an indirect benefit of improved sleep. And so I'm constantly asking people that sleep question over and over again.
Well, I would like to say that we had instruments to measure improvements in aggression, depression, all of those kinds of things, but it's based on language. And at the ACC Care Center, half of the residents were Japanese, half were Chinese, and the primary staff was from the Philippines. 3 different languages. So when they're saying, "Well, are they swearing at you?" Well, let me see. They don't. I don't know the swear words in Japan and Japanese and Chinese. It's like
Mm-hmm.
so. And that was one thing that in the summary of what we learned is that we need different instruments, or we need to have a common. If everybody spoke the same language, then it wouldn't have been such a problem. But you look at the care staff, and they are people from other countries, or you know different than the population, possibly. Not all the time, but could
You know,
be.
I can't understand half the people that speak English, so I don't even know if they're speaking the same language anyway. So,
Well, I was going to say there was one project that I was on in North Carolina, and the maintenance guy would talk, and I'd look at the researcher to say, "What did he say?" And because I couldn't understand it. So, but then
Do you
I'm in
think
the
do you think
Northwest.
it'll will it ever get to the point where you are just going to prescribe what's needed? You know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
here's what we need, and here's what your day should look like, assuming you're inside or whatever it might be.
Right. Well, I would like each care facility has a medical director. And I have to say that the reason why we got to do this research was the medical director, Scott Stringer at the ACC Care Center. He was a total advocate for that. In fact, he would prescribe what he called the Sunshine Club. And if these people were having a hard time sleeping, he would have them go outside for 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever it was. He would prescribe it. And so since the doctor wrote the prescription, the staff made certain they got out there. So if we could get the medical directors to say this is an important health issue and get them to pick up realize that it is a medical issue that we're talking about here. It's not, a physical design thing like lighting. It really impacts these people's health and well-being, as you say.
Mhm.
Where, medical directors, does every care home have a medical director? Is that like the Army has a
Whether they,
sergeant?
sh- yeah, well, if some of the large chains probably have one medical director that serves multiple facilities. In this case, I think Dr. Stringer had a few other facilities that maybe he consulted in, but he was the one that proposed the crossover study. He had been an emergency room physician and had some research experience with another project in that hospital. And so he was the one that came up with the idea of a crossover study instead of just, where we were testing the static lighting conditions with one group, and then the next time we would switch, that group would then have the tunable lighting in the next one, so that we could compare the same person in different lighting conditions.
What about choice? So, um, I whenever I offer a client a dimmer or a tuner, they start off with 5,000 K, and then you come back, it's always 3,000 K and half the light. So if you turn over control to somebody, they tend to want warmer colors all the time and less light. And so, now I'm not talking about visually impaired people. I'm not operating in that. I've worked in a lot of care homes, but never in that sense of circadian or trying to improve visual
Right.
acuity for those with, you know, whose eyes are not as once they once were. Um, you know, ha- but are we taking away choice and should the actual individual resident, do they have a right to choose, or is it something we're going to say no? You're just going to get hit with 6500K light, because I would hate that, by the way, personally. Um, you get 6500K, it's going to be 300 or 400 lux, and that's what you get because that's what's good for you. Is that how the best way to approach this is?
Well, I would say if they had a private room, go for it.
Mm.
You have what you want. But if in the common area, uh, if if it's impacting everyone,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where we need standards, we need guidelines, we
Mm.
need more research projects like the one that we did, so that we can find out just what light level do these people need in order to synchronize their circadian rhythms.
Do you have any research projects you're undertaking right now or have in the works coming up?
Well, Brown and I are talking about the next research project. The one thing that I wanted to point out that addresses the more recent research that comes out about, I said, too much light and too much noise at night. When we dimmed those lights down to 20% and changed the color, it was a cue for the family to go home. It's bedtime. And the staff also quieted down. Well, we were there measuring light. We weren't measuring sound. Next time, we will be measuring sound because it's the twofold noise and light that keeps people awake at night.
You mentioned earlier
And
in the
it's a,
conversation. Yeah, you mentioned earlier in the conversation about starving for darkness. There's also a sense that there's a starving for silence that's going on, and there's the shuffling and so a lot of times in long-term care, the doors to the rooms are left open too at night. That's another thing, and you can hear the pushing of carts, the beeping of different medical devices, and all this sort of thing. And definitely silence and light are, two things that go together at night that we as humans really want to have in order to be comfortable.
oh,
I think it's great.
absolutely. Yeah, I can give you some other research where they actually measured the decibel rating of the noise that the staff was making when they were in the corridor or doing this, and and it would repeat like every 2 minutes. Like how well would you sleep if you had crashing and banging going on? I wouldn't sleep well at all. So I believe that that's true, and that I think there are other cases where sound really goes down once the lights are dimmed. So it's kind of like if you had a baby in the house, nobody wants to wake up the baby. They want the baby to sleep. Well, we need to think about the older people as the same way. We want them to sleep.
And it's interesting because we have an aging population, as we see in the news all the time in Western countries. Japan's quite a number of years ahead of us down this
Mm-hmm.
path, but also the largest voting population in America is getting old. Is getting up there. I oftentimes in my lighting career, what's really something that has helped me learn and grow, and I know Greg has mentioned this as well, is having a career in lighting gets you into every other facility. So I've been to mines, I've been to factories, I've been to old, uh, long-term care centers, all these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them, and being able to see the differences between different kinds of factories, mines, long-term care centers, commercial buildings, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't think most people know about how many long-term care homes there are and the difference in quality between some of the perhaps ones that are maybe not meeting the standard, or however you want to describe that, to the maybe more elite homes that are out there. How can we make this equitable? Like, you know, I'm certain the very elite high end homes will, once this becomes cool, that there's like a Gucci suit value to this, and they'll jump on board and say, yes, we got the circadian system in here, and we're blasting them with 6500K, and they feel good. Everybody sleeps great, and it's quiet. But there's going to be most homes are going to fall into that middle tier where they're struggling for money, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of people left behind. Is there any? Do you guys ever talk about equity in terms of this, or being able to really reach some of those areas that are very low budget?
Well, to me, taking people outside is the best way
Mm,
to give them the
sure.
light. That's not going to cost you any money. You can just tell your activity people to um, make certain that they plan activities outdoors, and maybe you have to have if the weather isn't great, maybe you have something like a regular greenhouse, like you'd be growing plants, because that's going to give you the light for circadian as well as for vitamin D.
Mm.
So maybe it's a simple structure that keeps people warm, blocks the wind, but still allows them to get what they need. I think there's all kinds of ways of doing this, and there's also like doing an inventory of your facility. Do we have decorative draperies that are blocking the windows?
Mm.
Do we have,
Sure.
Mhm.
because right now people judge a facility on how it looks, and they say, "Oh, mom, dad, this is a great place. It looks like a nice hotel. You love it." Well, but a nice hotel is good to visit, but not to live there. And so many times people are fooled by the decor of the place that they don't ask the critical questions.
The maybe a final question for me would be whenever I encounter the circadian question or human centric lighting, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
all the people that are super confident about their findings are always talking about elderly folks in care homes, whether they be, dementia and Alzheimer's patients sleeping, or, Andrea Wilkerson talking about the hospitals and the NICU lab and
Mm-hmm.
these types of places. Do you believe that, that is where we're going to have most of the gains of this and where they're most applicable? Or do you think there's ever going to be something hard that comes into, the general population?
Well, I think with COVID, everybody found out that we really needed to go outside and exercise. All of a sudden the outside took on a much greater importance. Taking my grandson to go ride his bike in the bike park because that way he could get outside and get exercise uh, and still be safe. So, and CMS has changed their visitation now to recommend outdoor visitation because you don't need all the mechanical gear going on if it's outside. So, um, I think that it may be coming, and it's not. I think a lot of people, even um, middle-aged people, have some problems with sleep, and you can go and find all kinds of sleep apps like do this meditation, no chocolate after 12, that kind of all kinds of things, and have the right temperature, and it's there's a lot of people out there that would benefit from something like this, but they just have to know. And for me, it had been a problem early on in my life, and I understood that I needed to have the good light outdoors. And so, um, when I'd go out and take up my run first thing in the morning, even though in Portland, Oregon, it's overcast, there's still plenty of light out there. It's not like you have to have blazing sun.
Well, this is, I think the beachhead of circadian, Greg, and human
Mhm.
centric lighting is definitely in long term care. Eunice, any final thoughts for the listeners?
Well, just the fact that I'd like them to think about their families if they're being called upon to advise uh, family members who are planning to take a move. Because I'm glad that we're talking to the lighting industry because we need better products out there. But we also need to take care of our families. And that's, to me, so important. Yeah, my mother will be 103 next month
Wow.
in March.
Wow.
And she still lives in her own home and she still goes out and works with her garden and takes her walk and all of that kind of stuff. So, of course, she planned ahead. She had 5 daughters, so we rotate in and out so she can be at home. But not everybody can do that, and I know. And so that's why I would like to see the long-term care facilities improve so that everybody's got the same care that my mom does.
Here, here. Greggy, we got
It's
to
all
go to
good.
Anything?
led-llc.com, brother, for light efficient
Okay.
design.
Thank you so
That's
much.
right. Yep, the Flex Color shoebox wall pack has a rotatable base, 3K, 4K, 5K, different wattages, and 347 volt or 480 volt for you Canadians. So check it out.
So go check it out. Of course, our convention coming up in September, April 13th to 16th, Dallas, Texas, in combination with the ArcLight Summit. That's right. ArcLight Summit's getting nailed. They're getting together to throw a party. Register at nailed.org. And if you made it this far, I know I speak on behalf of Eunice and myself and Greg when I say thank you for listening. Bye for now.